in my Patreon group, we're exploring things that are hot, and we had a lovely live Zoom workshop on the subject. And one of the things we painted was, let me see if I find them. Actually, they're here. Candles. Candles have a flame that definitely gets hot. Then we also worked on things that are metaphorically hot or hot in non-temperature ways. And when I mentioned, how about we work on things that are metaphorically hot, one of my very witty participants said, oh, like Matthew McConaughey. Very funny. What I meant is hot peppers. Hot peppers are really fun to draw and paint. And usually I don't even draw them first because it's kind of a generic shape and it's fun to let the paint do what it wants. But you could draw them first, and I will draw them first here. I'm holding the pencil towards the tip so as not to get too precious with it. And I would start with that stem end and make them all different from each other. And you will see that you don't really have full control if you hold it down here, which is part of the fun. You can also enjoy composition. Here I have just 2 for the sake of time, but you can have 4, you can have 5, you can have a dozen, and you can enjoy making each one a little bit different from the previous one, right? So this is Arches paper. For the green, because it is difficult to paint natural greens when it's just, oops. These are my handmade paints, but in any case, greens are hard to paint in natural ways, and very few artists use them straight from the tube, or in this case, from the pan. So I'm starting with a iron oxide. It's like a raw sienna, and I'm adding some green. This is Verde Cromo Foresta, Chrome Forest, Chrome Green. Any kind of green will do. All right. And for the body of it, I would recommend wetting your paper first, just to let a more natural spreading of the color happen. You may not want to put the water all the way up. I used a lot of water on the stem. I think it's nice actually when the color of the stem blends a little bit with the color of the flower or the fruit in this case. And here too, you might want to start with the yellow. Hot peppers tend to be a rather warm green, so, a warm red, but also it's helpful if you want to make part of the pepper still green, like not quite ripe, then the yellow in between will work as a buffer of sorts, so you don't have too much mixture of red and green and thus lose the brightness of the color. A little bit is fine, but if you just have so much green and red, you'll get a rather muted color, which can be beautiful, but it's not really the color of hot peppers. So this is a generic orangey red that I made. I think I called it arancione, which means orange color in Italian. See how it gets muted. So then I add more green. Here it's very beautiful because the yellow is really prominent. They're doing work outside. Summer's coming to an end, and with it, the possibility of doing outdoors work in Vermont, or much of it. A little bit of a cooler, darker red, just to heighten that sense of depth. And then we are going to let this layer dry. I have a hard time staying within the lines, which is a good reason to go straight with the brush. Now, it is a reality of watercolor painting that the color dries lighter than it looks when it's wet. And therefore, not just for that reason, but that is one of the reasons why we tend to do more than one layer, right? It is also true, and trust me, I tried it, that you can't just add more paint and your painting will be brighter. What happens if you add a lot of paint is that you tend to lose the transparency of watercolor. Be careful with cad red. This is cadmium red light, and it's beautiful and warm, but it likes to take over. Anyways, you will get a brighter, cleaner color by having two layers of similar or same colors than by just adding more pigment to your paint. It's just how it is. This is out of place. That's fine. I'm fine with that. It's in my sketchbook anyways, but even if it weren't, it's okay. So it is part of the watercolorist job. Now I'm adding a little bit darker here, darker red, a dark magenta. It is part of the watercolorist job to learn to have patience, to let one layer dry and then go on with another layer when we want more color. That's just what we have to do, because if we want brightness and depth of color, then you have to do more than one layer. Transparency is the most wonderful thing about watercolor painting, or one of them, but definitely an important one. The paint is transparent, and what shines through, what makes it bright, is the white of the paper. So if you do a lot of thin layers or glazes, you will preserve that transparency. But if you go very thick or use a lot of a pigment such as cadmium red, which is somewhat opaque, then you can lose that transparency, and then you'll have more of a gouache look, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with the gouache look, but it's probably not what you want most of the time that you use watercolor. So having patience, working in layers, waiting for each layer to dry before adding the next one, those are all crucial things if we want our watercolor painting to be bright and clean and clear. So I hope you enjoy doing these hot peppers paint a lot of them. You can also make them different colors. I like the contrast of green and red. Thank you.